The hooded prophet stood upon the outcrop, surveying the dusty orange expanse that stretched out in front of him. The voices that had brought him here, had told him to do the terrible things he'd done, were suddenly silent. They had driven him to this, but he was certain that they were guiding him towards the truth. He looked down at his bloodied hands and then out again across the rusted plains below. Any minute now, he thought to himself. They told him to be patient, to wait. Behind him, another voice commanded him to stop this madness. Shut up, he thought. I killed you already. Another voice pleaded with him to stop, begged him. He clamped his bloodied hands over his ears and scrunched his eyes closed tightly. It worked. He opened his eyes and looked to the sky. The world wasn't so red anymore. It was all white. The sun had collapsed, and the galaxy was about to fold in on itself. Finally, he said. Supernova. Hello, and welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast in which I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. This is our 6th session, and things are getting pretty dicey for our intrepid hero, Archer Barlow, who finds himself having to explain to shady underworld character The Conduit just why he tried to surreptitiously hack the databank he had sworn to retrieve for her. If you leave a like, subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified when the next session drops, you can be with us every calamitous step of the way. And so, Archer comes to with a sharp intake of breath. I think he probably expects to find his hands bound or to be tied up or something, but he isn't. He's just sat in a chair, and he still has everything on him. He has his satchel, he has his gun. It's all present and correct. So where is he? I think he's been taken to a remote corner of Concord. It's a fairly large, low-ceilinged room that perhaps hasn't seen use for a long time. There's not much there. Maybe there's like piles of building materials kind of left around the room. Girders and kind of piping half covered by tarps and stuff, and maybe exposed wiring hanging down from missing bits in the ceiling. Whatever this was being built for, I just don't think it's been finished. Maybe it was being built and then it was just abandoned, or the architects of Concord just forgot about it. We said that, this place looked like it'd just been built building upon building upon building in a very haphazard fashion, and this is one of the forgotten places. I think maybe off to his right, there's one of those kind of heavy-duty floor-standing work lights, and it's shining right in his face. And he kind of squints as he looks at it, and it kind of blinds him temporarily. He kind of just tries to get his vision back, and he's in a chair, and that's where he's come to. And I think ahead of him, in this big, empty room, is a desk, and sat perched on the desk, swinging her legs backwards and forwards, is the Conduit. And she smiles gently at him, that smile of hers. She cocks her head to one side and says, "Please forgive the theatrics earlier, but the hired hands get restless if they go too long without incapacitating someone." And she smiles as she says this, and Archer can't read her at all, which I think is her intent. And he says, "Well, your goons certainly know their way around the central nervous system." And he's kind of rubbing his neck, which is still numb, and you can kind of feel the jolt in his bones still. And I've had to think about these security guards, those kind of mercenaries that jolted Archer last week. And thinking about it between recordings, like after what we rolled up about the Conduit when she showed herself, it kind of doesn't really feel right that she'd have like a retinue of bodyguards. She's this kind of shady, inconspicuous figure who's known by nobody, and is supposed to kind of retain this air of mystery, and that is not at all what this security detail was. So what I'm going to try and do is kind of work that contradiction into the narrative. And I'm going to say that they weren't her security. So if they weren't her security, who were they? So, Archer's rubbing his neck, and the conduit smiles again and says to him, well, I'm afraid you have my client to blame for the manhandling. I personally didn't feel like there was any need for such heavy-handedness. But on that point, my client and I just can't seem to agree. And the muscle is here to oversee proceedings. And I think Archer kind of looks at her quizzically and can't quite work out what she means by that. And the conduit kind of notices and says, now, I imagine that brain of yours is absolutely bursting with questions, but time is a factor here, so I shall cut to the chase. My client is expecting delivery of what I can only assume is beeping away in your satchel. And you can still hear that kind of low beeping in the satchel from the databank. If I may speak frankly, I was very much not expecting to see you arrive with it. Mainly because my client chose to hedge their bets and organise their own retrieval party to ensure the asset's safe return. Now, I advised against this, of course. Why would you use a sledgehammer when you need a scalpel? But alas, I was overruled. But yet somehow, here you are. Kind of hops down from the table and moves over towards him. And she says, the scalpel succeeds, and no one has heard from the sledgehammers. And this has made my client nervous. And it has certainly made me reevaluate my opinion of you. And I think it's safe to say that Archer does not know how to play this at all. Like, she's holding all the cards, and I don't think that Archer even knows what game he's playing at the minute. And I think, yeah, he's going to betray those feelings now. And he says, look, can we just drop the metaphors, please, and tell me who the hell those two Bannersworn were? And I think the conduit kind of catches that last bit and kind of cocks her head again and smiles and says, were? Past tense? I've underestimated you, Book. Please don't call me that. And she laughs again. Who were they? You really have no idea how much trouble you're in, do you? Enlighten me. This sector is under clan control. Now, we said in session 0 that there were 4, or was it 5? 5? Was it 4 or 5? 5 founder clans, I think it was. That they're constantly at war with each other. So let's roll up a clan name and see what the clan that controls this sector is called. Okay, 8 is Thorn. Okay, so maybe when Archer had the encounter with the Bannersworn on the creation, and he learnt they were Bannersworn, he found a black iron totem around the neck of one of them. It was like a clan totem. Let's say that was embellished with like a thorn motif. And he just didn't put those details together. I stay out of clan politics. Well, not anymore. And she laughs again. She laughs a lot. And she continues, you have stumbled into the middle of a war that has been raging for centuries. And that war is set to reach a decisive climax. Because of you. Because of what you have bleeping away there in that bag of yours is the key to ending it all. And she kind of puts her hand out to him and says, may I see it? And Archer hesitates for a second, like, why wouldn't she have just taken this whilst he was unconscious? The general vibe of this is off. So he reaches into his bag and he kind of takes out the data bank, and it's still beeping and slowly glowing. That little amber light on it is kind of fading up and down, and she takes it. And I think with that we can mark our last 2 progress on the Iron Vow, because this is very much recovering the data bank and returning it to the conduit. So this is the last 2 progress on the vow. So we're just going to fulfill our vow now and roll against the progress we've made. Okay, that's a strong hit. Now, the vow had a dangerous rank, so we're going to mark 2 ticks on our quest's legacy track. And again, this is like the other legacy track we've been filling in, the discoveries one. When we fill out a full box here, we're going to get some XP to spend. But at the same time, we're also going to develop our relationship with the conduit. And we're going to do this by making the connection move called Develop Your Relationship. And that just says when you reinforce your relationship with the connection by doing any of the following, and there's a list here, completing a quest to their benefit is one that we've done. So we're going to mark progress on that track. We determined that she was formidable, and I feel like now we've met her, she kind of feels that way. So that's going to be 1 progress filled, and that kind of mechanically represents our kind of like growing relationship. Okay, back to this scene. So the conduit, she has the data bank in her hands. She says, "This holds what many feel is the final piece of a puzzle that the founder clans have been trying to solve for decades." But what is it? What is it specifically? We found out some vague details last session. We know that the creation was transporting a high-tech weapon. We found that out when we were on it. When Griff briefly hacked into the databank last week, we learned that there was a fleet that the creation was supposed to deliver this high-tech weapon, whatever this was, to, before there was the mutiny and it crashed. But what's the nature of this weapon? Why the interest? Why all the mystery? So should we roll up and see what we get? We'll ask the Oracle. And we'll roll on 2. We'll roll on the focus and the descriptor. 23 is device. 16 is chaotic. So chaotic device. Okay. So maybe the high-tech weapon they were transporting was something that could harness mystic energy, maybe? We established in world building that magic was very much real and mystics were rare but dangerous and struggled to control their powers. I think that's what we said. So what if someone some time ago was trying to figure out how to kind of weaponize that energy? Oh, hang on. Maybe that is what the creation was transporting. It was transporting a weapon that could harness mystical, chaotic energy, but also what if the passengers it was transporting were the mystics that were meant to power this weapon? And what if those mystics figured out what they were being transported for and that they were going to be used to essentially power an experimental death machine? And maybe that's why there were no bodies. Maybe someone did come and take the weapon away. They did recover it from the wreckage. But also, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't come for the weapon. They came for the people. That's why there were no bodies. That's it. Whoever came for the weapon came for the people. The weapon was just like part of it, just one thing. But the people, kind of the mystics, they were the ammunition. And this was decades ago. And maybe in this kind of long war, all sides, all the clans in this conflict have like grown increasingly desperate with how attritional it's become and how costly it's become. And maybe they've gotten desperate enough to try and figure out what happened to this like mysterious experimental weapon. Maybe the search for this thing has been going on for years, and like the clues have like kind of slowly been emerging and coming in dribs and drabs, and maybe the clans didn't believe it at first that there was this legendary mythical device to end all wars, but I think maybe what if all sides have become so ground down by the conflict that they'll try anything to end it, and it turns out that this weapon very much could be real, and Archer has just handed over what could be the vital clue in finding it. So, what a revelation. So the conduit takes the databank, and she takes it back to her desk, and she plugs it into this kind of like travel-y laptop thing, like a field computer. It's kind of a boxy, kind of like briefcase type size thing. And she says, "The information you have recovered on this databank may well uncover the key to finding a weapon so powerful that whoever comes into possession of it would dominate the Forge." And Archer kind of just shakes his head and just says again, "I stay out of clan politics." And she smiles, kind of one more time, and says, "It's a little late to claim neutrality, Archer Barlow. You are in this war now, whether you like it or not. You just need to pick a side." And I think like she gets like a beep on her comms device, and which is, you know, like a pager. You remember those pagers? Anyone remember the 90s? That was a thing. She wears it on her belt loop and kind of checks it and says, "Okay, time really is of the essence, so listen to me carefully." And she kind of moves over to him and gets closer to him, and she takes his head in her hands. And it's been quite some time since anyone's actually touched Archer, since he's had any kind of physical contact at all, and it kind of feels like instantly comforting to him. And she says, "Clan Thorn have a transport of Bannersworn about to dock here. They're coming for the databank, and they're coming for you." And Archer says, "Oh, how do they know about me?" "I told them." "You told them?" "Yes, now listen. I told them that you were in possession of what they had sent their Bannersworn to retrieve, and you were probably responsible for their subsequent disappearance." "What?" "The security outside are just mercenaries. Clan Thorn have engaged their services to oversee the handover of the databank, and then, not to put too fine a point on it, kill you. I said that they could, of course, but only after I'd had my 5 minutes with you to wrap up our business, and thankfully they agreed to those terms." She takes her comms unit and says into it, "Yes, I'm finished with him. He's all yours." And Archer, stands up and turns, back towards the doors that are behind him, where he can only assume Death Squad is about to enter any minute. And the conduit moves in front of him, putting herself between him and the doors. And she grabs his face again and says, "Listen to me." And Archer says, "What?" And then behind her, the doors burst open, and Archer can see the mercenaries move into the room, slowly starting to draw their guns, fanning out. Let's say there's 4 of them. They move up a matter of meters behind the conduit. She whispers to Archer, "Do you trust me?" He says, "Absolutely not." Smart boy. And she reaches down and she takes Archer's gun from its holster on his thigh. And then it all happens so fast. She spins around, fires 4 shots, and 4 bodies hit the floor. "You killed them. You killed them." She puts his gun back in his holster. "No, you did. And that's what I'm going to tell them anyway." She moves back over to the desk and taps at her laptop again, and this little disc pops out. It's kind of tiny, kind of like a floppy disk. Floppy disk pages. We're really taking a trip down memory lane. I'm seriously betraying my age here. And she kind of gives it to Archer. And she says, "You need to take this copy." So the conduit is clearly not who we thought she was. She's clearly not a fence. She's clearly not just into moving stolen goods and illicitly traded artifacts and rare things. It appears that she also enjoys a spot of light espionage. But who is she working for? What is her agenda? what side is she on? She said you have to pick a side. She has not given any of that away, so who knows what game she's playing, what she's part of. What we do know is that she's asking Archer to take a copy of the information. Now, take it for what? Where? Is he going to deliver it somewhere? Why? Who to? Should we figure this out? Okay, let's do it. So, she's given him a copy of the information on the databank, and it seems logical that she would want it to go somewhere or to someone. So, where's it going to go? I think we should stay in this sector, just because I don't want this story to sprawl too far out. And we've established that this sector is under the control of Clan Thorn, who are now about to become, what I can presume, antagonists in this story. So let's keep it here. So we're in the Corvus Breach. That's the name of our sector we established. We're going to stay there. This is a happening sector. It's where it's all going on, so we're going to stick around. So we've established 3 settlements in the Corvus Breach. Damu, where we've been, and frankly not too keen on returning to, and Concord, which is about to become real uncool very soon by the sounds of it, so we need to get out of here. Now, the other settlement of the ice world of Varnholm and its orbital settlement that goes around it, I've kind of got an idea of what I want to do with that later if it comes up. So I'd like to keep that one in the back burner. So I think it's fairly logical that she's asking me to take this into uncharted space. So this big area over here is where we're talking about. So I'm going to have to explore that and deliver this information to someone. So where are we taking it? To who and why? Let's roll up a settlement name, shall we? So, okay. 60 is Paxton. Paxton, I hope, is a tribute to the late, great Bill Paxton. But I think on its own, that sounds weird, so we'll give it a suffix. Paxton Hold. Paxton Outpost. Paxton Landing. I think I like Paxton Hold. So Paxton Hold. And who am I handing this information over to? 16 is Blake. 40 is Sutton. Blake Sutton. Sutton Blake? Blake Sutton. Blake Sutton, I like that. Blake Sutton, who is a... 57 is a navigator. So I need to go to Paxton Hold and give this information to Blake Sutton, who is a navigator. Okay. So I'm just going to say that all that was heavily implied... because I don't want to just now roleplay that exposition. So the conduit says, take it. Take this. It's not like you have many options anymore, Barlow. And Archer looks at the bodies on the floor around him and says, yeah, you kind of narrowed those down for me. And the conduit says, then you know what to do. Swear it. So Archer reaches into his jacket and he takes out the professor's black iron compass. And he folds it into his palm and says, I better live through this. So now we're going to swear another iron vow to the conduit. So we get +1 because she's a connection. And let's see what happens. Okay, a weak hit. And a weak hit with a 10. So momentum is not going to help me. We've got 9 momentum currently. Yeah, so I can't burn that for a strong hit. So my quest begins with more questions and answers. Well, no fucking shit it does. Okay, so this iron vow is going to be deliver the databank copy to Blake Sutton. And I think I'm going to call this one formidable. Now, the last iron vow I swore was dangerous, and it's taken 6 sessions to do. So you may be asking why I think formidable is a good idea. The reason I feel like it might be formidable is at least I knew where I was going before. I've got to explore this big stretch of the vast emptiness of space. This huge big blank spot here is where I'm going. And yeah, that feels more formidable to me. Much less straightforward. So I've sworn an iron vow to get this thing where it's going. Okay, now the conduit's tone changes. Kind of grave, serious. And she says, you'll have a head start. but I can only delay them so long. And they will absolutely not stop until they find you. And then she unfolds Archer's fingers from around the compass and looks in his hands and says, you know there's a reason it had to be you. You will get answers from this. Answers about her. And Archer's skin prickles, kind of goosebumps at the very idea of the professor being mentioned. And I don't know if you remember, I said that, like, Archer always took jobs from the conduit that were very few and far between, but they always seemed to offer kind of snippets of insight or info into whatever it was that Archer and the professor were looking into or researching. Like nothing specific, but like all seemed to kind of hint at something beneath the surface of what they were doing might be connected to the Iron Gates, or whatever he was asked to retrieve was kind of maybe some way connected to their field of study. And it was just in small ways, but he kept coming back for those jobs, and it was no different why he took this one. But yet now she's in front of him. He's actually met the conduit, and now she's specifically referring to Professor Darwin with the compass. Like, what does she know? And then her communicator bleeps again. And she says, and now you really do need to go. Archer says, well, what if you need to find me? And she kind of laughs and says, I think I'll find you. I think I'll be all right. Because that's kind of her whole deal. I think I said a few episodes ago that, like, knowledge in this world is a dangerous thing. It would probably get you killed, when she's the person who knows everything. So that's kind of seems to be how dangerous she is. So yeah, let's get out of here. So kind of Archer gathers himself and takes one last look at the conduit. This incredibly beautiful person who seems to know everything, just murdered 4 people and blackmailed him into becoming a kind of spy in a galactic war. But yeah, farewell. And he kind of turns and leaves. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It seems like she said, I really do need to go. So does that mean that Clan Thorn have docked? Let's say they have. So they've arrived. Now, I am parked. I left the car in landing base 7. And I need to get there, get on the Eclipse, leave Concord without them following me. So how are we going to do it? I feel like we want to try and avoid the mistakes of the last 48 hours. And let's approach things somewhat more analytically and play to our strengths rather than just trying to wing it. So let's say we leave this room, this abandoned room, and let's say we kind of move into what it makes sense that it would be an abandoned corridor. Maybe this whole annex bit of the Concord compound, as it were, was just not finished and goes down this fairly long corridor. And yeah, there's no lighting. There's a lot of it missing. There's a lot of kind of building material still left around, like there wasn't a room. And after he follows the corridor for a while, he gets to, life again, and there's people passing by, and maybe he kind of has to move a sign out of the way that says, under construction or whatever, and kind of finds himself back in the main part of Concord. It's like the well-lit corridors that we've kind of walked along and seen before. And I think it's fair to assume that there'd be like maybe a little terminal or something that I think he could access. And what I want to do here is I want to see if we can tap into this network maybe and see what we can find out. Maybe this could be gather information, but feels more interesting if it is secure an advantage. And because when it says, when you assess the situation, make preparations or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. And we're going to do it with expertise, focus, or observation. And I think, yeah, if I'm trying to get into the feed of the security footage, maybe that's what I'm doing. Trying to get like a live feed on where these Bannersworn might be, to see where they are, and maybe figure out which route they might be taking to the conduit's location, and maybe see how I can avoid them. So this is definitely observation and expertise. So I'm going to roll plus wits. Okay, that's a miss. So I definitely will burn my momentum here, because if this whole escapade starts badly, I am in real trouble. So burn my momentum of 9, make this a strong hit. My momentum now resets to 2, but the strong hit gives me 2 momentum back. So that's back up to 4 pretty much straight away. And being a strong hit, I can take +1 on my next move. So I think that I get into the system no problem, and I can see them leaving their ship, and maybe they're splitting up into smaller groups, which is obviously the smart thing to do. So how many are there? How many Bannersworn would Clan Thorn send to retrieve this data bank? Now, I've established this is pretty important, but like they wouldn't send like an entire battalion, like thousands or hundreds of people. So how many do we think? 10? 20? Let's say 10. Because 10 is definitely more than I can fight. So let maybe say that, their base of operations might be quite far away from Concord, or it's the distance between them. They can't just send someone like round in an Uber that's going to take 8 minutes. It's a while. So like the mercenaries were here in the short term. They obviously don't know they're dead, but they were here to kind of oversee things, and whilst the Bannersworn would turn up. So let's say 10. And let's describe them. So obviously we met some Bannersworn on the creation, but they were kind of dressed for salvage, weren't they? So not combat. So what are the kind of the proper Bannersworn kind of warriors look like? I think heavily armed is a safe assumption, and definitely armored. So they've got like military grade weaponry and armor. And whilst I'm looking at this on like a little grainy security monitor, I think I should be able to detect something kind of visually striking about them. I think that kind of sets them apart. Now, if I recall correctly, one of the Bannersworn that I ran into on the creation, their gear and their stuff was adorned with, it was kind of like they had gilded weapons and a face mask, didn't they? So maybe that's the thing they do. Maybe it's not like really ornate and kind of fine detail. Maybe even on this shitty little monitor, I can see that the shoulder pads and the chest plates of the armor are inlaid with a kind of like a metallic detail, let's say. And Archer can't see this, but they're totally Thorns. It's armor with Thorns on it, and it's kind of like this copper metallic finish. And Thorns, yes, it's on the nose, but here we are. This is Clan Thorn. I don't think they're subtle. So there's 10, at least 10, let's say. And they've all split up. Now, while I'm in this network, tapping away, I think I'll bring up a little schematic and kind of quickly work out what series of corridors I have to take to avoid them. But I think that it shouldn't be that straightforward. So let's say that by avoiding them completely, I will end up in the wrong landing bay, and I'll still have to get to the one where the Eclipse is parked. And also I stand out. I don't fit in here, so it's going to be hard for me to do this, on the QT. So I'm going to move cautiously along the route that I've mapped out using the security footage and the schematic. And I think this is inherently dangerous, so it's going to be a face danger roll, because they could change route at any time, and I'm going to run into them, and it'll be a whole thing, and I don't really want that to happen. So I'm going to try and do this stealthily, as stealthily as I can. So I'm going to roll plus shadow for this. I don't think we've got time to be cautious, and I think that if I just run as fast as I can to try and get there with edge, then I think that might draw a lot of attention to myself. So we're going to face danger, roll in plus shadow, and I get +1 on the move from the secure and advantage. Okay, so that's a strong hit. So +1 momentum. We're up to 5 momentum. So trusting the information that I gleaned from the footage and the map of this place, and it doesn't really make sense at all, because like we said, this layout is just insane. It's kind of built with no real forethought. I managed to move quickly and surreptitiously through the complex, and it's still busy. I do stand out, but it's busy enough to kind of, so people don't linger on me too long. And I kind of pass some suspicious eyes in the corridor, but I keep moving and keep my head down. And we established in session 0 that this place, when we talked about the authority this place had, we said it was minimal. So there's no one to save me here. There's no one who's going to step in and stop these Bannersworn doing whatever it is they want to do to me. So that's a bit of comfort that I'm not going to find here. So, right, let's say I exit the last corridor that I go down. and it's into a landing bay, and it's not the one I want because we established that would be too straightforward. So let's say it's landing bay 19, but the numbers we've established mean nothing. It could be next door, but in relation to 7, where I've got to be, not obvious. So I look around and I see, is there a map? Is there like, a shopping mall you have there? You are here, and tells you where everything is. Let's see if there's a map on the wall or something that I can find. So let's gather information. I'm definitely trying to find a clue here to where I'm going. So let's try and do this whilst not looking like a complete tourist. That would be great. So that's a miss. That is a miss, isn't it? So the move says, my investigation unearths a dire threat and pay the price. So I think it's fairly obvious what this is going to be, isn't it? So I think that I find the information I'm looking for. There is in fact a handy map on the wall, and that map has been amended and redrawn and crossed out. There's, with every addition and extension to this place has had foisted upon it over the years. I figure out my landing bay is kind of 2 landing bays over, and now I start to hustle. It's busy enough in here that I think that someone running is not going to draw too much attention. It's not unusual. I mean, it's not safe. You should be definitely careful. It's a health and safety nightmare, but I think time is of the essence. Let's go. So I cross landing bay 19, which is where I arrived, and I think that leads into landing bay 40. Let's say they all look pretty much the same. They're functional, big, ugly sheds full of functional, ugly people, and it's like noisy and hot, and there's kind of sparks showering down on you as you pass under the ships that are being kind of worked on as kind of grubs, and hangar crew kind of furiously race to get their ships up and running again so they can get out as quick as they can and get back doing grub work. And there's all the little urchins on their mini haulers kind of whizzing around and not caring if you're in the way or not, and they kind of swear angrily at you as they kind of fly past you. And I think Archer crosses landing bay 40 and he reaches landing bay 7, and we're going to pay the price for our miss and the dire threat we have unearthed. And I'm just going to pick off the table, and what we're going to say is we're going to pick the result that says a new enemy is revealed. And I think that is in the shape of a Bannersworn, armoured and heavily armed, stood guarding the eclipse. Because obviously they know who I am, which means they obviously know what my ship is. And they wouldn't send everybody, would they? They're not dummies. So they obviously left someone behind to guard my ship in case this exact thing happened. And here we are. So this is bad. I would be really outmatched here. Firepower-wise, definitely. I think if I took a hit from a big military-grade assault weapon, I would probably perish instantly. So, yeah. I think Archer instantly ducks out of sight. That's the first thing he does, behind this kind of stack of crates that's being unloaded. And he peeks out for another look. And let's say we have about 30 meters between where I am and the eclipse is. Between me and the eclipse, there are probably various bits of cargo and machinery, but no other ships. I would have some cover to work with, but then so would the Bannersworn. So I'll just try and get a bit more detail. Let's roll up a bit of detail about them. Firstly, let's just grab a gender straight away. Female. And let's get something from the first look oracle. 6 is accompanied. Oh, are they not alone? Oh dear, oh dear. Accompanied, though, might not... It's a weird word to say that there's another Bannersworn there. So what else could they be accompanied by? Like a bot, perhaps? Yeah, maybe she's been left to guard the ship alone, but they've left her with a bot. What type of bot? I think a combat bot, obviously. These are pretty combat-focused folks. So I'm taking very little comfort in the fact that there is not only a Bannersworn, they have a little death robot with them. So that's no good. So let's describe the bot. Let's say it's a little kind of hovering bot. Much sleeker and newer than Griff, I have to say. Maybe like V-shaped, like a kind of stealth bomber shape. And similarly decorated with that kind of gilded thorn motif. They've really tied their aesthetic together. it's nice to have, a little bit of continuity between the looks. So let's say it's also got like a pair of guns under each wing. Why not? Let's make it worse for ourselves. It's a fire support bot. Let's say that's what it is. It looks maneuverable, it looks fast, and it is tooled up to shoot me to death. So that's fun. And what are we going to do? So, taking the kind of analytical approach hasn't worked too well so far. So I'm going to say, fuck it. We cannot hang around. We're going to have to take these two out. We don't really have a choice. I don't want to have to fight here, but I'd rather fight one Bannersworn and a bot than 10 other Bannersworn. Yeah, what else am I going to do? Like ring the fire alarm and see if they like wander off? That's not an option. This is Ironsworn. This is no time for schoolboy shenanigans. So, okay, so let's keep trying to play to our strengths at least. And we will try and analyze the situation, and let's kind of set an ambush. Let's try and take these two out with a minimum of fuss and less likelihood of me being blown to smithereens. So, what should we do and how should we do it? So, let's kind of look over the room and work out the best bits of cover to use, try and figure out how I can get into position to strike. And I think we're going to do that by securing an advantage. So let's roll plus wits. That's a weak hit. So weak hit, mechanically, let's take +1 on the next move. So I slip out from behind that stack of cargo and I move a bit closer. And I'm still not close enough for them to kind of see me clearly, and I can kind of move around the other two bits of cover, and maybe there's this stack of pallets kind of piled twice as high as me, and I'm kind of more towards the back of the Eclipse as I look at them, and I'm kind of slightly behind the Bannersworn. Like, I'm not totally behind them, and they're looking at the door that I left through when I arrived, when I went through into the corridor and kind of went to the mess hall. I'm not totally behind her, but like, she would have to turn around a bit to shoot back at me, so that might buy me a split second, which could be all I need. So I think this is my best shot. I'm just going to kind of wait here for a perfect moment, and then I think I'm going to try and take the bot out first, then the Bannersworn, then get on the ship, then go. So what I might do is I might make Griff aware of my presence, so get my kind of comms unit out, and I'm like, Griff, be ready. Be ready. Be ready. I'm whispering because, you know what, never mind. You're switched on at least, so that's a start. So, okay, let's enter the fray here. So, let's call this defeat Bannersworn and escape. That's the objective. What's the rank? This is probably formidable again, because I am ambushing them. On the creation, I fought the two Bannersworn and it was formidable, but that was formidable because I started that with me stuck in a hole. And I think this has got to be formidable again. I have the jump, but they have the vastly superior firepower, so formidable. So I'm preparing to strike an unaware foe, so that'll be roll plus shadow, and I got +1 from the forward planning. So here goes nothing. Okay, strong hit. Forward planning really pays off. +2 momentum, so that's up to 7, and I am in control. So Archer waits a second. He waits for one of the mini haulers, the urchins, to kind of drive by the Bannersworn. And I think that momentarily distracts them. So I just wait for them to look the other way for a second, and then I line up the shot with my pistol, aiming at the bot, which is hovering at about head height, about 3 meters away from the Bannersworn. So let's strike from range, plus edge. Not only is that a strong hit, that is a strong hit with a match. So this has started very well. We get to mark progress twice, and we stay in control. So I think I nail the bot just in the right place. And it sparks and it drops straight to the ground with like bluey white electric coursing through it. And it's frying and smoking. And I think the match that I rolled means that it's maybe going to be out of the fight for a little bit whilst it reboots. And I think it sends the Bannersworn kind of stumbling back in as the sparks fly, and now she's exposed. Before, she probably easily could have gotten to a piece of cover, but now she's in the open, and I'm going to move into the next piece of cover, stay behind her, gun trained, and maybe try and maneuver into a better position. Keep her exposed, keep her in the open. So I'm going to gain ground in pursuit or maneuvering. So that's roll plus edge. Okay, so that's a weak hit. I'm going to stay in control. 2 momentum. So I'm up to 9. This is good. So I move from behind the pallets into like behind some crates. The hangar crew have kind of all scattered and fled. And the Bannersworn is about 10 meters ahead of me now. They are in the open, off balance, and without her bot. And I'm going to try and just take her out. Carefully aimed shot, so striking again, rolling plus edge. Okay, so that is a miss. I've rolled a 10 there, so my momentum is going to only make this into a weak hit if I burn it. So, yeah, I'm going to burn that momentum, and we reset back down to 2. It does mean I get to mark progress twice, but crucially, I lose control of the situation, and it puts me in a bad spot. So, I think I hit her square in the chest. But it's hard to tell kind of how much the hit was absorbed by the armor, because it's, quite chunky, and I think I come out of cover briefly to kind of get a better look. But off to the right, the combat bot has just come back online, and I see it rising up from the ground in my periphery, and it just opens up on me in a hail of gunfire. And I think I have to try and just scrabble back towards the cover of the crates that I've just popped out from. So I'm going to react under fire by dodging or taking cover, so roll plus edge. That's a miss with a match. So I've rolled a hit with a match and a miss with a match. And a miss with a match is bad. Bad, very, very bad. I'm still in a bad spot, and the situation worsens, and I must pay the price. So the bot just unleashes a hail of gunfire on me, and it just shreds these crates that I'm kind of hiding behind, and it forces me kind of diving back to the pallets that I was started behind. So I'm kind of being forced back, and I think the obvious kind of suffer move to make here is I'm gonna take some harm, not like a straight hit, because I think that would probably like tear my head off. So I think maybe I'm just kind of showered with the shrapnel from the crates, and I'll take 1 harm. And I'm going to try and shrug this off. I'm going to try and endure this harm. So I am going to roll. I'm going to roll plus health, because it's higher than my iron. So that's a weak hit. So, and I don't want to exchange any momentum for health, so I'll just suck it up and carry on. So I think the match means that the Bannersworn is not only still in the fight, I think she's now moving into cover and has her gun raised. And yeah, I'm in serious danger of being outflanked, outmaneuvered. So I need to do something pretty drastic. I need to take her out before she hails the others. But I think she's already firing on my position as she moves into cover. But she's towards the back of the ship. So I'm going to hail Griff, and I'm going to get him to just fire the engines up. And I think that this is kind of creating a distraction. So it's react under fire plus shadow. Okay, that's a weak hit. So I hail Griff, and I'm like, flare the engines now. Yeah, now, just do it. And there's like a roar from the engine, which forces the Bannersworn kind of staggering back out of cover, meaning that she can't get around to flank me, but I mechanically stay in a bad spot, and I have to make a suffer move. And I think panic is starting to set in, much the same as it did in the last combat I was in. And I think I'm going to take a hit to my spirit. So my spirit's going to go down to 2. And I don't really feel like trying to endure that, because I think I'm just going to make it worse, because it never seems to pay off for me. But yeah, the realization this is not going very well is starting to grind me down. So, okay, I need to do something here, and I need momentum, and I need to turn the tide and get back in control in this fight. Otherwise, I'm going to be toast. So, what am I going to do? The bot is still firing on me, but I have the Bannersworn in the open. I am going to have to be quite daring here, quite bold. So, what I'm going to do is I am going to rush across the space. I'm going to get out of cover and kind of close the gap between myself and the Bannersworn and get into the cover that they were trying to get into. Because if I get there, it means that I'll have cover and she'll have nowhere to go. But I am being shot out by a death robot. So this is definitely reacting under fire by dodging and getting into cover. So roll plus edge. Strong hit. finally, I get control back and get some sweet, sweet momentum. So momentum's up to 3, and what happens? So I dash out from what's left of the cover I was in, and the air is kind of fizzing with the suppressing fire from the combat bot. And I stay low, and I roll into cover behind a stack of, I don't know, like metal pipes or something. And I can feel the heat from the engines of the afterburners that Griff just fired. And you can see the kind of air quivering with the heat between me and the banner swarm. And as the engines kind of die back down, I'm presented with a clear shot, and I'm going to take it. So I'm going to strike plus edge. Strong hit. Mark my progress up to 6, and I think that does it. I think I hit her square in the chest, and this time it does go through the armor, and she slumps down to the floor. And I think she kind of weakly tries to raise her gun towards me, but she can't quite get the effort to lift it, and she falls to the side, lifeless and still. But the bot is now moving round the other side. As I've moved, it's going to have to go all the way around the ship to try and get round the other side, to try and flank me in the position that the banner swarm was trying to get into. But I'm going to be ready for it. I am going to run behind the ship and kind of dive behind like some more cover, maybe one of the mini haulers that the urchins left behind. And I can get into position there. So when I'm in control, if I get in position there, when the bot pops around the other side of the ship, I'll have a clear, straight shot at it. So I'm going to try and gain ground by coordinating a plan. And I've gained leverage, and it's going to fall into my trap. So this is going to be plus wits. Okay, that's a weak hit, so I'll mark progress. I think that represents being in a good position rather than having the time to take careful aim. I'm in good cover, and whilst perhaps the bot's moved a bit quickly and I don't have time to line up like a careful shot, it will be a clean shot if I can get it. So let's strike. Rolling plus edge. Strong hit. We're up to 9 progress, and I think I'd nail it flush. But it's still coming. It is a relentless machine built to deal death. And I think its armor plating is deceptively thick. And my pistol isn't the strongest. Doesn't have great stopping power. It's more built for range. So apart from that first hit, my pistol hasn't been able to actually do that much damage. But maybe if I can get it in like a weak spot, maybe like in the undercarriage somewhere, I can finish it off. So I'm in control. I have 9 progress. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take decisive action and end the fight. So I'm going to roll against the progress, which is currently 9. That's a strong hit. So, ready for some heroic nonsense? Strap yourselves in. So I think the last shot hit it pretty good. But like I said, it's still coming. But maybe it is damaged. It's like skittishly flying around, kind of erratically shooting off in random directions. And maybe its sensors and its systems are all fried. And sparks and smoke is jetting out of it and kind of spins and bobs up and down in the air, unleashing torrents of fire in kind of wide arcs and just spraying it everywhere, firing wildly around the hangar. And Archer kind of ducks under the shots as they come in, but he's kind of watching the bot, trying to predict its unpredictable movements. And I think it kind of spins to face in the opposite direction, and then that's his moment. And he pulls himself up and over the cargo that he's been taking cover behind, and the bot is about 2 meters off the ground, maybe 10 meters away, so Archer has to be quick. And he just runs. He just runs, and he's closing the gap, but then the bot turns, and it wheels round towards him, spraying gunfire around. But Archer's seen it. He's anticipated it, and he launches himself onto the floor, rolling over, sliding on his back. So he dodges the laser blasts, and he slides backwards underneath the bot. And as he passes underneath, squeezes off 3 clean shots right into the machine's undercarriage. And it just cleaves it in a shower of sparks and oil and Nuts and bolts. And then I think he moves over to the banner swarm and he grabs the comms unit that she has on her belt. And I don't think she managed to use it. I think that's safe to say. I think this was a very quick, brutal, fast fight, and I don't think she had the time to hail anyone. So, but he picks it up and he holds it to his ear, listening, and there's nothing, just static. And then he killed the mercs. He's on the move. Lock this place down. Archer drops the comms unit and turns and runs back towards the eclipse. And he pulls out his own comms unit, and as he does, and Griff, I think it's time we left. Thank you, a million times thank you for watching. Wow. Looks like Archer's story has taken quite the turn. We've now met the conduit, and it did not go where I thought it was going to go. And as it turns out, they are not just an underworld figure, but somewhat of a player in a long-running galactic war. And Archer is now involved, and this just proves the old adage that you should never, ever, ever open the MacGuffin. It is bad news. Please leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you've not done so already, and push that little bell icon to be notified of when the next video drops. I hope you liked this week's Tale from the Drift that opened up the episode. Once again, it's a little bit of flash fiction that I write using a few prompts from the oracles. And once again, those prompts that I rolled for inspiration are in the description below. Submissions are still very much open if you have access to the preview edition and want to roll up a bit of flash fiction for me to read at the start of each episode. We have received some already, but do keep them coming. If you want to have a crack, please do get in touch via the email address on the screen now, and I'll let you know the parameters for submission. Until next week, farewell and safe passage.